I was looking through the business section earlier because you know me, I love me some business. I suppose that's part of why I got into accounting, but I found this article in the Los Angeles Times and I thought it was worth taking a closer look at. The article is titled, "To Thwart the Trolls, Social Media Sites Should Require Users' Real Names." The article starts with the author talking about a recent ruling in the California Court of Appeals which ruled in favor of ZL Technologies, which was trying to sue for the identities of anonymous reviewers who posted bad reviews of their company on another site. The court ruled that ZL would have to prove financial harm from false statements, and the court apparently concluded that ZL had sufficiently shown that this had occurred. The article continued with, "But the more I delve into the ruling, the more I find myself stewing on the undeniable problem of anonymous cyber trolls saying hateful, factual, dubious things from beneath a digital cloak of invisibility. That's why I'm increasingly thinking that our best solution to keeping trolls at bay may be a requirement by social media sites that all members use their real names in posting comments. Trolling is a terrible problem," acknowledged Ryan Kalo, an assistant law professor at the University of Washington who specializes in technology issues. "Our company is doing enough? I don't think they are." He quickly added, however, that we shouldn't live in a world where if you don't show utmost civility, you're erased from the internet. And that is where I think the problem lies. I don't know the actual numbers, but it seems to me that social media is full of people giving their subjective opinions, and very little about objective truths. Most people don't seem to use social media to learn about new scientific discoveries or similar things, but when they do, they usually trust scientists or news articles. Neither are necessarily a good source of science, nor are either necessarily trustworthy. But if you're getting your so-called facts from some jackass online, then you probably need some time to rethink your life. Science, or practically any way of knowing anything, will not come from Twitter. Even the science articles that are posted on Twitter aren't really examples of science on Twitter, but rather a user who wanted to share something they thought was interesting. And I think most people are aware of this. They go to Twitter to see what people are talking about and maybe even share their own thoughts, feelings, and experiences, their own subjective thoughts on the topic. And people usually go to Facebook for like cat videos or to poke their relatives that they don't keep in contact with, but don't want to feel like they don't care about them. Or, whatever people do on Facebook these days. But anyways, my point is that most of what's being posted are people's subjective opinions, so if you take someone's opinion as unquestionable truth, then the problem isn't really with the trolls, but rather your gullibility. And aside from that, the behaviors and attitudes that constitute being a jerk are subjective. If I make a mistake with grammar or I misspell something, and someone corrects me, I could feel like they're being a jerk because they hurt my feelings, or I could see it as someone offering help, and then anyone who didn't say anything but saw the mistake must not care enough to take the time to help me fix it. So obviously my interpretation will have something to do with the means with which they deliver the message to me, and also what they said in particular, but that doesn't change the problem. It just means that there'll be some interactions that most everyone will see as being mean, and some that most everyone will agree as being polite, and then there'll be much more in between and open to interpretation. So just because one person or even a whole mob of people don't like what someone has to say, that doesn't mean we should shut them down. Just because we think it's mean, because the terms are subjective, and so anyone can say anything is mean just because they don't agree with it or don't like the person saying it. I think such behavior will lead to witch hunts where online personalities are attacked on the claims that they're bad people, when all they are truly guilty of is that they said things that popular online personalities and other celebrities don't like. Oh wait, that's happening all the time? Oh, okay. Well, alright then. So yeah, no, we should not try to silence those who say things that we think are mean, because meanness is subjective. The article continues by mentioning a study from 2014. A 2014 study published in the Journal of Personality and Individual Differences concluded that trolling correlates positively with sadism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism. Of all personality measures, sadism shows the most robust association with trolling, it found. Thus, cyber trolling appears to be an internet manifestation of everyday sadism. So the act of pissing people off online is correlated with getting enjoyment from the displeasure of others. Big surprise there. I never would have guessed. But correlation doesn't prove causation, so maybe people who troll become sadists because it's just so goddamn fun to shitpost. So continuing on, I'm aware that my stance, which, let the record show, I'm putting out there under my own name, will not be popular with some. It also seems to beg for exceptions, which undermines my argument. Well, David Lazarus, I think you have a shit argument. But to be fair, I don't think exceptions undermine the argument if the exceptions are well reasoned. For example, fraud requires knowingly making false statements that cause financial harm on anyone who relied on the false information. Fraud is illegal and not protected by free speech, and that alone doesn't undermine the arguments in favor of free speech. It just means free speech has its limits, the same way privacy might benefit from having limits. Or maybe not. But regardless, such exceptions don't undermine the argument if they're reasoned well. I have the freedom to speak my mind so long as I'm not willingly harming others. Weighing the latter doesn't invalidate the former. But what do I know? I'm just some anonymous guy online saying mean things. But we'll come back to that later on in this video. For now, let's continue with the article. In her decision, Acting Justice Maria Rivera ruled that there is a need for minimal precaution to protect the rights of the speaker to put ideas into the public marketplace without fear of harassment or retaliation. She concluded that ZL would have to show evidence of defamation, including falsity, before disclosure of a defendant's identity can be compelled, without harassment or retaliation. So basically, the judge ruled that we should be free to speak our minds without being hunted down by an angry mob, which isn't to say that we shouldn't receive backlash from our speech, but that we should be free to express those thoughts without being harassed or fired, especially when one wants to express ideas but isn't trying to make a statement about their employer. For example, when Thunderfoot spoke out against things like feminism, he should not be fired when his videos have nothing to do with his employer, and although the employer has the right to hire and fire whoever they like, they shouldn't just fire someone for expressing their own opinion on their own time in a way that makes them as unlikely as possible for those ideas to be associated with the employer. If I keep my identity a secret and no one can trace my ideas back to my employer, then why does it matter? Should we allow for purity tests when it comes to employment? Obviously not, unless the job requires believing in a particular thing. For example, a church would be well within reason to test the knowledge and opinions of a prospective new preacher. Or likewise, a school would be within reason to make sure a teacher isn't going to object to teaching the course material, such as a biology teacher having to teach evolution, because, it's science. The First Amendment protects people from compulsory identification, Levy said. There's a lot of good reasons to want privacy or anonymity when you speak online. That's true, and critiquing a current or former employee on a site like Glassdoor without fear of retaliation is one of them. Submitting information in a whistleblower capacity is another. Protecting a victim of domestic violence. But there are gray areas. I know many small business owners who are frustrated that customers and even rival companies can post anonymous negative reviews on sites like Yelp. Why, they ask, shouldn't such people be held accountable for the accusations they make, just as the business is being held accountable? Well, because they're making the accusation on Yelp. And Yelp is where you go to get opinions on restaurants, not objective facts about restaurants. So most people will take those reviews with a grain of salt. And besides, what's the alternative? I have to give my real name, and then when I go to pay for my food and they see my name on the debit card, they can decide to spit in my food? Maybe that's the world you want to live in, but that's not the world I want to live in. But moving on. And then there's Twitter, a digital playground I frequent. I know all too well how easy it is for people with made-up identity concealing handles to post vicious insults or spread complete falsehoods. I always find myself thinking if they had to stand behind their words, that is, accept responsibility by having their identities known, that there's no way most of these people would behave this way. I don't agree with that at all. I see some of the most aggressive conversations on Facebook and Twitter, often from people not posting anonymously. While on Minds.com, those disagreements happen as well, but I also see a lot of constructive conversations, often from people posting anonymously, which isn't something that I see much of on Facebook or Twitter. And yet, Minds is much more open to free speech and much less willing to censor people. Maybe that has something to do with it. Facebook, Twitter, and other leading social media services should require use of real names, and they should enforce such a policy by requiring a credit card when signing up. This should serve as a means for identification as well as facilitating online purchases, which all these sites want to do anyway. Well, you haven't thought this through, have you? Think about the elderly and the poor people that don't have credit cards or bank accounts. Should they be excluded from social media for simply not having these things? I mean, if the companies want to limit their users in that way, then they're free to do so, but it'll no doubt cost them users. Maybe not like a ton of users, but it'll cost them some users. And it's not like Facebook is the hip new thing with young people or anything, so they probably need to keep all the users they can. And even some homeless people have active social media accounts in an attempt to find employment. Restricting these people will be a social death sentence that may leave them incapable of finding employment. After all, many employers search for prospective employees on social media, and not finding an account may come off as suspicious. And what about the grandparents who keep all of their money in the mattress and use social media to connect with their families? Should they be restricted from Facebook simply for not having the need for a bank account? Not everyone wants to make purchases on social media, and not everyone will be comfortable giving their financial information to Facebook, especially if they have worries about their account being hacked. So, doing this will likely have a negative financial impact on these companies, and would likely decrease active daily users, which will find other social media sites that don't require such information. If Facebook wants to become another MySpace, then by all means, carry out this plan. But if instead they want to hold on to what little relevance they have left, then they should avoid any such plan of requiring credit cards. Free speech is part of the DNA of this nation, but so is treating others with respect, I'd like to think. You'd like to think. Too bad that's not in the Constitution. I'd like to think separation of church and state is part of the DNA of our nation, and yet religion seems to creep its ugly head around every corner of American life, including politics. And that separation is something that is in the Constitution, unlike your little politeness fantasy. So we don't always get what we want, do we? But keep dreaming, and I'll be here to keep trying to wake you up. The article concludes with, Kayla at the University of Washington said it's unlikely that big social media sites will take action until they notice a large number of users walking away in frustration. Tell you what, guys, I think we're already there. Yeah, you wish. Seems to me like the only people leaving these sites are people that get censored and then get sick of the site for that reason. Maybe people leave for other reasons as well, but if you honestly think Facebook and Twitter are going to lose popularity because of some trolls, I think you're mistaken. But it's sort of funny when you think about it, because what you're saying is rather than ignoring the trolls and minimizing their control over you, you think the best solution is to leave the platform and basically give them all the power over the situation. Instead, I think the best way to combat negativity is with positivity. This is basically the same disagreement that happened with Anita Sarkeesian and YouTuber Boogie2988 at VidCon, where Anita said something on the lines of combating cyberbullying by fighting back, and Boogie said he thinks we should ignore the hate and highlight the love and kindness, or something on those lines. Which I think is the way to go, because, as I've said before, you can't beat hate with more hate. You have to win with better ideas. And the only way to spread those ideas is in an environment where people are free to speak their minds openly. But with that being said, I feel like I need to address some possible criticism, because I've been posting my videos for a little while now, and yet I've stayed anonymous, which may seem like an attempt to hide from criticism, but it's really not. The truth of the matter is that I just don't have a good camera. So I thought the style of video I've been using would be an acceptable alternative to the face cam, but I want to assure that no one can say I'm hiding. I'm also aware that some people like the mystery of not knowing who certain YouTubers are, I guess. Some people just don't want to know who they're watching or whatever. So if that's how you feel about it, then, or you just don't care who I am at all, then feel free to stop this video now. If, however, you want to see who I am, and you really care or whatever, then stick around and I'll show you. But in case you decide not to stick around, thanks for watching, please rate and subscribe and all that, and I'll see you next time. Well, here I am, not hiding. So, hello everyone, my name's Matt Edwards. As I've said before, I'm from Portland, Oregon, and I stand by all the stuff I've said on this channel. All the comments and the ideas and the jokes, I stand by all of it. Thanks for watching. If you like my work, please subscribe to my channel, and please rate this video and leave a comment. But most importantly, remember to never stop questioning.